Anatamka kwenye majukwaa ya kisiasa, lakini anakwenda kwenye utekelezaji. Mpaka sasa watu wengi wanajitokeza kumwandika, na mimi nikiwepo. Lakini pia kama mimi peke yangu ningeandika kitabu peke yangu, sama langu hapa, viongozi wa aina hiyo kuendelea kuipeleka kusukuma gurudumu la maendeleo katika nchi yetu. Lakini pia na sisi wenyewe wananchi lazima tuendelee kuwasapoti viongozi. Tusikae kuwategemea viongozi peke yake, na sisi wenyewe tujitokeze kuendelea kuwasukuma na kuwasaidia viongozi, kuwapa support ili waweze kufanya hayo mazuri. Hayati John Pombe Magufuli kuna mambo mengi sana alitokea alipokuwa ameanza kutekeleza ile ilani ya Chama cha Mapinduzi. Wanasiasa wamezoea kufikiria kwa ukishamaliza kuzungumza kwenye jukwaa, ukishuka, hata usipotekeleza hawawezi kufuatilia. Lakini hata kwa kiongozi aliyoko juu wakahoji kwamba mbona mmetuahidi hiki hatujakiona. Kwa sababu ya kile kivuli cha hayati John Pombe Magufuli, hata viongozi wengine walianza kujituma na kuanza kupeleka maendeleo kwa wananchi kwa kasi. Bwawa la Mwalimu Nyerere, Islam, interchange Kijazi pale, daraja la Mfugale na daraja la pale Matai ya Chang'ombe, yote hiyo bila kuwepo na msukumo kutekeleza, kwa sababu watu hawataki kusimamia majukumu yao. Lakini kwa uwezo wa Rais Magufuli aliweza kuwasimamia viongozi wenzake, na hayo yakafanyika kwa kiwango hicho tulichokiona, na tukaona kwamba kumbe inawezekana. Kutokana hiyo falsafa tu hiyo ya KK4 tukaanza kugundua kwamba kumbe mambo yanawezekana kama yakisimamiwa vizuri. Kabla ya hapo tulikuwa sisi tuko inferior sana. Kitabu hiki wanapiga simu kusema mbona profile yako huku na kilichomo hakifanani. Ni hiyo KK4 ya Magufuli imefanya kazi. Kwa hiyo tunapomzungumza Magufuli, yako mengi sana ya kumzungumza ambayo amefanya katika taifa hili. Lakini sio taifa hili tu, hata nje ya mataifa yetu. Tumeona rafiki Samalango yuko Malawi kule, lakini kumbe alikuwa anaona yanamuingia, anasema huyu jamaa, it is a golden opportunity. It is a golden opportunity in Africa. Naye akaamua ngoja niandike. Tena yeye ni mwana taaluma, akasema ngoja aandike. Ameandika kitaaluma. Kwa hiyo mimi nasema tuendelee kumwandika Magufuli, na tuendelee kuwa na imani na watu ambao wanamwandika kwamba na mambo mengineyo kama hayo. Tuliona kwenye issue ya corona aliyoyafanya, wengi tunafahamu. Kwa hiyo
in my house, should he be able to cover the costs for his own transport? To thank me for my kind words about the book, lifestyle, his unquestionable integrity, his end to attain political independence in the 60s. When Lumumba tried to turn political independence into economic freedom, he was violent, like Silvanus Olympio, Thomas Sankara, and Chris Hani. Others like Kwame Nkrumah and Modibo Keïta realized their vision, Saliri stepped out of power, of African liberation, that of political freedom. Africa descended into the worst form of neocolonialism called neoliberalism. Every trace of Africa's initiative at self-emancipation was killed and buried. Imported manufactured goods, as African workers were languishing in the streets, jobless. Social services were commodified. The leadership code that prevented leaders from using their positions for self-enrichment was trashed, turning public offices into corruption zones. Small-scale farmers and artisanal miners were forcibly evicted from their land, which was given to foreign corporations. In Bulyanhulu, for instance, in this country, his philosophical outlook and its practical application have several cornerstones. I'll discuss a few of them. The first one, and probably has nothing to do with its powers. When he declared his famous economic war, it was a war to repossess Africa's stolen wealth and assets and put them that had been granted to multinational corporations and the forced models. The agenda for reparations found its advocate in Tanzania, as Magufuli became the first Tanzanian and probably the first African leader in the neoliberal era to demand reparations from mining giants for the plunder and devastations that they caused to the country. His government enacted the most radical laws, the laws on permanent sovereignty over natural resources and wealth, so as to protect our resources and to make sure that they benefit the current and future generations, and to force to artisanal miners. He banned Monsanto GMO trials, repossessed and revamped strategic public enterprises, and the list goes on. The state became an active end industry. The third and the most important one was South-South cooperation. It was Magufuli's belief, wherever we do not have expertise and resources, we should seek them from other African countries or global South nations before we turn to other nations. It was in this spirit that most of the key tasks, be it the negotiations with multinationals or the building of the new state house in Dodoma, were given to his role. His key flagship project, the construction of the Nyerere hydropower project, was commissioned to Egyptians. Remember, the West was vehemently opposed to the construction of the Nyerere Dam, to the extent that the German parliament, thinking that Tanzania was still its colony, passed a resolution to warn Tanzania against constructing it. The United States withdrew its MCC funding that was linked to Obama's Power Africa initiative and aimed at professionals' monopoly of energy production in Africa. The US had the money to construct the dam. This did not stop Magufuli from realizing Nyerere's dream of making Tanzania self-sufficient in power production. On the launching of the project, Magufuli addressed the nation and he said, the speech was in Kiswahili, but I'll translate it. Brothers and sisters, given that ours is a sovereign and not a poor country, I repeat, ours is a sovereign and not a poor country, as some would think. We have therefore decided that we must execute this project using our own money. As you have heard, this project will cost 6.5 trillion Tanzanian shillings. That money will be paid by the government of the United Republic of Tanzania through the taxes it collects from you, the citizens of Tanzania. And I am so glad that these monies will be paid to a contractor from Egypt, our fellow Africans. If we Africans decide, if we stick together, pitch aside, and delved into the history of Africa extemporaneously, I continue to quote. He said, the ancient Egyptians managed to build pyramids using calculations that cannot be comprehended, using modern physics and mathematics. A stone weighing many tons was lifted up a mountain height. I do not know which technique they used. Now, it doesn't make sense for us not to, while they built pyramids, which are the wonders of the world today. We want this project to be another wonder that using their own resources. I believe Sheikh Anta Diop, who wrote African Origins of Civilization, was turning in his grave with joy that the knowledge about Africa and self-esteem of Africans was another cornerstone of Magufuli's thought. With mental faculties and make decisions about our future. Those who enslaved us continue to tell us that the task of thinking and deciding about Africa's destiny should be left to our former colonizers through the IMF and World Bank. A report that showed that that there had been zero economic growth since Magufuli came to power, while the World Bank placed Tanzania low. But the statistics finally gave in. In 2020, they published another report that showed that Tanzania's GDP, far from contracting, had actually doubled under Magufuli's first phase. Lifting Tanzania in a span of 5 years. Clap your hands for this great man. In other words, there had been an economic miracle. John Pombe Magufuli was not just an icon, he was a hero. May his name be preserved in every cabin of Africa I want. From Malawi, we got the best eulogy of Magufuli at the time when the Western looters and their local agents were busy tarnishing his image, outlook, and its place in the second liberation of Africa. Indeed, when the IMF had made a ridiculous proposal way back in 1986 that Africa did not need universities, they wanted to prevent our continent from producing intellectuals of Professor Chintenga's caliber. And I quote, Lumumba said, "History will one day have its say. It will not be the history taught in the United Nations, Washington, Paris, or Brussels. However, that have rid themselves of colonialism and its puppets. Africa will write its own history, and both North and South of glory and dignity." Once again, so much. May this book be translated in all African languages and friends of Africa, wherever they are in the world.
I think we are in one group where ito kwamba ni kupambana, lakini nataka tu Watanzania wamuelewe kwamba kila Mtanzania kwa hali yake na kwa namna yake ana uwezo. Na hata kama wa Afrika wa nini. Asante, thank you, Sabato. Next, we have the student, wherever you are. Joshua Matewele is the student leader is the acting student union president of the University of Hebron in Malawi. He will be giving a speech, at the same time a poem. Welcome.
cha Mapinduzi, members of the diplomatic corps, government representatives, dear parents, staff, and my fellow students. Allow me to also honor my mentor, Professor P.L. Lumumba. You are a great inspiration to the youth of our African continent. And wherever you're watching this very, very special way, allow me to honor Her Excellency, Mama Samia Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. It's a real honor and a great privilege to stand and address all of you today. From Lilongwe, Malawi, to Mwanza district, to Chato, I visited where the great lion, the hero of our people, was laid to rest. John Pombe Magufuli. I saw with my own eyes and stood and paid my respect to a great African leader in the 21st century who has started a great revolution, even in the hearts of all Africans, both young and old. And even to the